Welcome to the Rediscover Radiance Podcast. Rediscover Radiance is a transformative podcast designed for corporate professionals who are embarking on a journey of self-reclamation. We believe that within each of us lies a radiant core, a place of authenticity, resilience, and purpose. Sometimes life's challenges can dim our inner light. Our mission, to help you reignite it. Let's meet your hosts. Lizzy Garcia, the curious guide, the seeker who asks the tough questions. Karen and Great, the strength-based guide, the compassionate seeker who dives into the heart of matters. Together, they are on a mission to inspire you to reclaim your self-worth and glow with brilliance. Why rediscover radiance? Because you deserve to shine. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's embark on this radiant journey together. Remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your purpose awaits.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rediscover Radiance. I am here with my lovely co-host, Ms. Lizzy Garcia, and our special guest today is Jennifer Gilman. She is with Functional Medicine Health Coach. She has her own business. It is a New Way Health Coach is the business, and so we're going to be sitting down with Jennifer, and we want to welcome you guys in today. It is Mental Health Awareness Month for the month of May. So it's really important and timely that we have these types of conversations. So when Lizzy and I were thinking about episode 2, right, what does that look like? How do we position what we want to talk about? And the original theme was more about career pivots and mental health and leadership. And I just really have this phrase like, you got to honor your feelings and then you got to take action. Right? It's important to have your feelings. It's important to process your feelings. But at some point, right, you gotta you can't camp out there is what I've always said. So I think each of us right here on the podcast, those of you that are listening, have all had those pivotal moments in life, right? Where something happens or you get to a point where you're recognizing that, hey, either I need to make a change or guess what? Like you guys learned from me, change happens to me. Change happened to me many times before I took the moment and the courageous opportunity to do something different. So today I met Jennifer, just a little backstory, met her at the International Coaching Federation Central Florida chapter, probably about a month ago. And she was talking about the type of coaching that she practices, and it's in functional medicine. And I was fascinated by it. And I said, she's just someone that I've got to talk to. So that is why she is here today. Wanted to give a little bit of background here. She is a trailblazer in this industry of holistic health. She's a visionary health coach who's been transforming lives for over a decade. She has a long personal commitment to wellness and robust professional practice. She's unparalleled ability to foster profound connections and creates transformative space for sustainable change. So again, she's perfect for this business and she's got a great story to tell. So that is why we're here today, is to really, understand where are we going to go with this and really having a framework to decide, should I stay or should I go? And I'm thinking of the song, yes, should I stay or should I go? And when Lizzy and I were talking about this podcast, I was doing a walk, she was in my ear, and we were kind of talking through, we were processing a situation that was going on. And that's when I said, it's just that should I stay or should I go moment. So it just really fed into that. And that's why we have Jennifer here today. So let's get to learn a little bit more about Jennifer. Lizzy, would you like to start with our first question for Jennifer?
Yeah. So Jennifer, just tell us about you. Tell us about your background. I'm so intrigued at what you're doing. So tell us about you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me as episode 2 as part of your show. I really appreciate that, and I'm honored. For me, it was really, I had this corporate background and I was in the hospitality industry for years. But during that time, I was always working on my own health. So fast forward when it was time to actually make a change, and I can get into that a little bit more in depth later, I realized, wow, I can actually take some of the things I've learned and move forward into a new business in holistic health. And that has been wonderful for me because not only is it a space for me to continue to work on my own health, I do have an autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which has been in remission for several years now, but it was something I really had to tackle and I wanted to do it completely holistically. So that was just, it started out with me, it was just me wanting to feel better all the way around, having better well-being in total, and then wanting to give back to others. So I did make a very big career change in basically 2012 to 2014. There was a big pivot there. But
Wow.
yeah, and coaching ended up being a great platform for this, as I evolved.
So tell us about that pivotal moment. I think you said it was between 2012 and 2014. Like,
Yes.
what was going on at that time? How did you come up with this game plan to go from the hospitality industry into coaching?
Yes, yeah. And I have maybe a little bit different story. I listened to your first podcast, so I know Karen has a different story of a pivot. For mine, it might be refreshing. Mine's a little, slightly different. I really enjoyed my job, and it was more of a it was a God moment, honestly. I started sensing and feeling I was really meant to have a career change. And I started verbally telling some of my close friends saying, I think I'm supposed to change fields. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, but it's a very powerful force. I am meant to change. And they're like, but don't you like your job? I said, yes, I like my job. So that was the one thing that was very hard. So if you are listening and can relate to this, pay attention to those moments, but allow yourself grace and patience. Because honestly, that probably started around 2010 is when I started having these feelings. And I openly started talking about it. And then I finally decided to get myself a journal. It's like, well, what would it be that I do? Here I am, global account director, working with meeting professionals with, a big hotel company. And I'm like, what else do I do? I've been doing this field my whole life. And so I just started jotting things down. I called it my blue sky journal.
Mhm.
And I wrote down things I loved, things I like to do. Can I make a career out of it? And I had a lot of entries, you guys, is trying to discover and be curious and creative in the process. And these are things I didn't ever do before because I never had a calling so strong. And none of my friends really helped me in the essence of they didn't really have ideas. This was really a soul searching journey. And all of a sudden, my last entry was to become an herbalist. All right. And that was because I was really into plant medicine for my own health. I was always I used to travel quite a bit. So I would patch myself up when I got to a place. I knew what to do 2 days before I traveled and got on a plane. A lot of things with my immune system just to be well in a natural, holistic way. And so I went to a couple of workshops, herbal workshops, and I decided I'm going to be an herbalist. And I come home and tell my husband, he's like, what? What are you talking about? So the first thing I realized is I have no schooling in this. So at this point, I had a bachelor's degree and an MBA in what I was doing, but I never, had any anatomy or physiology classes. So I decided to find a very good school. So I really did turn to learning. Later on, I learned that is a strength of mine. On every Strength Finders test you can find, love of learning is absolutely in the top 5. So little did I know, I did utilize one of my strengths, and that was a go-to of how can I learn more? And so I did find a school out west because on the East Coast where I live here in Florida, at that time, there were 1-year programs. So I went for a 3-year true master's thesis and all program. And in 2012, I decided to start what was called the Herbal Cabinet, my business as a clinical herbalist, and started taking little cases while I was still working. And I had a game plan, is hoping to leave my job by January of 2015. So it was I really leaned on the learning, but if I didn't have a belief in myself that I could do something else, I wouldn't have done that. It was an intense belief and desire, and then spirituality took over as well of oh, there is this message. I'm meant to do something else. So that is how I got started.
Wow. I love that. I love that. So this was really wrapped into you discovering another purpose, a whole new purpose that had opened up and pursuing that from that strong place. I love that so
Yes.
much. Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So It's funny too, because when Lizzy and I were tossing around ideas, like how do we make these kind of decisions? And, I started rattling off all kinds of structure work. I mean, I'm a trainer by trade, so you can't take that away from me. I'm going to, do some instructional design work, and I'm going to like, okay, we got to start with a process, right? So like, what's a phrase that we can use to remember how to make these really key decisions? And it's like each reflection, right, realizes that there's a valuable path there to explore introspectively. So when I think about reflection, and you talked about blue sky moments, and you talked about it being a calling and really a God thing, what is some of the evidence that came your way as you were doing that blue sky journaling?
Yeah, I think part of it was continuing to come back to things that I wanted to do for others. So one of the things on that list was opening a food co-op so that they could have really good, nourishing food. People can have that in our local area. So when I looked, there were some things that were trending that were common. There was commonalities there, and it was absolutely wrapped around helping people. And I noticed it was in a health-related area. And looking at my own journey I have stumbled upon and discovered things, but I feel like I went about it the very hard way, because at the time I was seeing more conventional doctors. Of course, then I moved into functional medicine, and that's a whole different thing of having a very good healthcare team that listens to me now and is a collaborative approach and all. But at the time, I would ask questions and get shut down. So I felt like my journey was really trying to find things on my own and didn't feel so supported. So I just built that resiliency of like, I can do this, but it was matched with my belief, and starting to research and learn what are the processes out there? How can I do this? How are other herbalists running their businesses that I might want to emulate, but allowing myself the flexibility, because when you start something out, you don't truly know how it's going to come to being, how this is actually going to be. And I worked out of my home. I didn't have a brick and mortar place. I thought about it many times. There was many opportunities. People came to me and said, do you want to do a joint partnership and open this facility? I'm a massage therapist. You're an herbalist. Mm-hmm. So several times I had real serious discussions about that possibility. And something in me said, no, don't do it. So I just kind of continued to build my practice. But I think as you look at other business models, that's really important to see what is it that you like about them, and taking, okay, I like that about this one. Do I think I can do it as well? And there's no like new ideas out there. It's just researching and figuring out and getting to know people. I very quickly became a member of the American Herbalist Guild and went to their annual meetings. I invested in myself for my learning and talked to so many people that were doing things very differently, and deciding, do I just want to be an educator, or do I want to work one-to-one with people? I enjoyed working one-to-one with people and also educating in groups and like lecture style in a way about plant medicine. So that's kind of how it all began. And then of course it evolved later on into coaching.
Wow. And how, you mentioned that there were some naysayers. I would just say naysayers because they weren't necessarily supporting you as you were going through that journey. This is a big shift. It's, you're going from a corporate structured type of environment into something brand new. And, at this point in time, I remember moving to the Orlando area in 2015, and having been from the Midwest where there was much a stronger presence in holistic medicine and herbology and those sorts of things, coming here and realizing, wow, there's not really a lot here. This isn't something. So at that point in time, just thinking about where you were, that was something that was not very, widespread within our area. Right. So it putting myself back in that time when you're telling people this, they're probably like, why are you doing that? Yeah. How did you deal with that internally? Because I know for me, having that support is so important to me, and it gets hard for me when I too am trying to make that shift and I hear people not really supporting, but putting that doubt in my mind. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that at that time?
That is such a good question. And I think this is what really blocks a lot of people from launching, is lack of support. My husband, although he had said that initially, he jumped right on. He has been my biggest support system. I mean, he has never told me I couldn't do it, never used words like that whatsoever. And really, really supportive, great person for me to fall and cry and have a pity party. And he just listens, helps to pull me back up again. And he's been through a lot with me of the unsteadiness of like, what am I doing? Am I crazy? But really being my champion. So that was a big deal. My daughter was quite young at the time. And I know, Karen, you have a 21-year-old and so do I. So this is way back then. And she immediately was like, you are leaving the hotel business. So when we travel, we don't get free room service and welcome amenities, I'm like, oh my gosh. She was thinking about how wonderful it was to travel to these wonderful resorts and how she got treated when she was there. And, but she overcame that quickly because she saw that I was loving what I was doing. And I would even make herbal preparations and sell them. And so it wasn't just the one-to-one, herbology visits and things like that. But I think it just took on a life of its own. So they saw how I was and how happy I was. Now, people around me, I had a couple of friends that they were all in because they were the ones I was telling, I'm meant to have a change. I don't know what it is. So they were locally around me and on that journey, but it was just a few close friends. So they went with me and championed me. So they were just as supportive and still are to this day. But my hospitality industry, I kept it very quiet for a reason because I knew my plan was keep working in that job, save money and stash money over here while I build my herbal practice. And again, the plan was initially January 2015. I ended up leaving in June 2014. But they were shocked. They were like, you're leaving this job, I was well paid and lots of perks and all that. And they're like, you're going to become an herbalist? Mm-hmm. They just really didn't understand. So I felt like I had my tail between my legs there. Honestly, there was a bit of shame. There was like, what am I doing? And it's hard, when you feel that shame of the shame of I'm leaving something that was really good. Do I really know what I'm doing? But there was a feeling of shame. That's what it was. I'll call it what it is. And I just really tried to be around my new people, as much as possible. The best way for me to handle it at the time was to kind of close the door on the old industry because I couldn't deal with what they might think of me or what I was telling myself, what they were thinking of me. Not a lot of people verbalized things. It was the narrative in my head that was circling around and like, what am I doing? I'm leaving this. But my way of doing it was really kind of closing the door for now. Mm-hmm. And little by little, I opened that door throughout the years and I would reconnect with people and they never judged me. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah. What a lesson to learn there, right?
Yeah.
What we tell ourselves and the reality of the situation, right? It could be polar opposite different. As you're talking, I'm hearing the risk and the rewards for you making this pivotal change in your life. And when you had said it, your face just lit up and it glowed. It said, I'm loving what I'm doing. And it's more true to my essence. Even your daughter, I've worked in hospitality as well. It is lovely to go into the hotels and such. And, you just show up differently when you're in alignment with your beliefs and your values. And I can resonate with that so much, right? When you have a powerful belief of the way something should be, and when you're not living in that, I think that's really when people really struggle with that disillusionment. Like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not living my purpose. I'm not up to the task. So, my question to you now, Jennifer, thanks for sharing that. It's really, really powerful. You talk a lot about functional medicine and then traditional medicine. And then with your own journey with your autoimmune disease, and it's been in remission for 2 years, thank God. What do you attribute that remission to?
Yeah, I think I needed to burn out completely. So that's part of the journey. So here's now I'm in this industry. I love it. And I got to the point of like, I would wake up and I couldn't wait to get to work, in my home, right? I had so many ideas. I started doing things. I worked it around my job, morning, noon, and night, and so much excitement. And I would drop in bed exhausted. And I'd wake up the next morning, jump out of bed, and doing the same thing over and over and over again. I completely became a workaholic, truly, but I loved what I was doing. So it wasn't out of like exhaustion of overwhelm or something I hated doing or anything like that. Again, I loved what I was doing and I was working every moment of the day to accomplish it all. And my health started going downhill, and it was 2015, 2016. I go to my doctor and my doctor checks labs, and this was traditional at this point, or conventional, I should say. And he's like, "No, you're fine." I'm like, "I'm not fine. I'm feeling things and things are not good." And I chose not to be on thyroid medication. So that was my own choice. I never wanted to work with medications for it. But everything was fine according to my blood work. 2017 was bad. I completely burned out. So it's something I speak about, burnout, on how I recovered. So what made that shift? It was fall of 2017, and I had so many symptoms. My hair is falling out like crazy. I have full body tremors. I can't speak correctly. Thoughts are here and they're not coming out of my mouth correctly. And what do? I say to myself, if I could just get through to the end of the year, because I have certain goals I want to meet. So I didn't stop. I kept going. And in December, I had researched, I know I need a good functional medicine doctor. I made the appointment for the beginning of January. By then, I was really bad. And I go in, and of course, they're like, your Hashimoto's is off the charts, and you need to start doing this, this, and this. Now, fortunately, functional medicine, they don't immediately put you on medication. They said you need to make drastic changes. And they kind of went through nutrition, movement, stress reduction, self-care, all of that, just very briefly, just those categories. And I had a belief and a knowledge of many of these things, but I wasn't doing the self-care aspect. I was eating well in general. Self-care was awful. It was non-existent in my life. So that's where I started. And by May, all of my symptoms were gone because of bringing self-care in. It was hard. It was really hard. And my favorite first book was Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. That's where I started. And I just started this work, and I'd fall off and I'd start back again and fall off and start back again. But I was feeling better month after month after month. And when I went back, they said, "What are you doing? Keep doing it." Most of it was centered around, yes, I made changes in some food and movement, not doing major high impact cardio, instead of pulling it down into more relaxed things, some great yoga. But I really softened things to engage that part of my nervous system to get out of fight or flight. But it was the self-care. That was a big difference. And so that is what changed everything. It really did. And that's when I realized I need to tell people about this. Mm-hmm. And I discovered coaching, and I decided to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I know, some people, especially when you're in the corporate world, I feel like self-care is something that's kind of just like laughed at, or misunderstood. Jennifer, what are some tricks that you did, or what are some tips that you would give someone who's struggling with burnout? What are just some simple things and simple changes that you made that anyone can incorporate into their day?
Yeah, I think the first is, working on the self-compassion. And there's a wonderful woman, Dr. Kristen Neff, Neff. Dr. Kristen Neff has dedicated her life's work to self-compassion. She's got a wonderful website and gives tools, and she even has a self-compassion quiz. But I think in order to start setting healthy boundaries, you have to have self-compassion for yourself. And mine on a scale from 1 to 10 was probably 0 or 1 at that time. I was giving so much to others. I had so much compassion for others and none for myself. So in order to build the strength and the resiliency and to start setting healthy boundaries so that I could carve out these times, is I had to really learn self-compassion. And the first tip was, what am I telling myself here? Would I ever talk to a friend the way I talk to myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that is one way to start the process. And another was, very early on, I wrote down, what would I want my ideal day to look like? This was a very powerful exercise. I cannot remember what book it was from right now, but I went and just sat in a very comfortable spot in my house and just relaxed. And I'm like, I am going to look at this of like, how would I want my day to go? I would want to wake up and actually have some self-care time of journaling, reading, exercising, whatever it is I want to do, meditation, have a nice cup of coffee, have a healthy breakfast. I want that time to be extended. And then I wanted to really not work until a majority of the afternoon, have my work in the afternoon. And then I would want to have dinner with friends and family and just, that kind of a day. So that's a generalization, but I really took it and I mapped it out. And I really encourage other people to do that of, what would your ideal day be without financial constraints? Forget about finances right now. If you don't have a goal, like a place where you're going to, well, you can't see it, right? So once I had that, I started working towards it. Soon after, as I started some self-care, I established that I would not begin my workday till 11 a.m. And I still have that in place. Mm-hmm. So that is a really big deal. So in 2018 was life-changing and transformative for me. Also my business, because I realized I needed to help others and I needed to go to school for coaching and become a health coach. So I started with integrative health coach, and then I did a whole nother school for hormone health coaching, and then finally another year of functional medicine coaching. Mm-hmm. And that's where I decided to niche my business. But along the way, I've had wonderful functional medicine doctors and functional medicine health coaches for myself. I have a great healthcare team, so many great chiropractor, therapist, whenever I need one. And so having a good team is really critical, and realizing no reason to do it alone. There is no reason to try to even feel like you should do this alone, because that is a lonely journey, and it's very difficult to do that.
Powerful stuff, Jennifer. I know you also have a book called 50 Shades of Self-Care.
Yes.
It's available on Amazon. And I love that title, by the way. It's captivating.
Little edgy,
Well, it is edgy, right? Because, you talk about work-life balance and you put in the corporate lingo and it's like, okay, what can we do? Here's EAP, here's, Lyra, here's all these services to kind of help. And when you really kind of differentiated and talked about what good you got out of each person on your team, whether it be what people refer to as modern medicine or regular medicine versus what you practice in functional medicine and healthy coaching tips and tricks. It was really about that self-care and that compassion. And let's not forget that evil stress, that cortisol that pulsates through our bodies. Yeah. For our listeners, I would probably argue to say that many are dealing with that stress. And I love the way you framed that one question. You said, take away the financial obligations, right? Because, stress and finances tend to be a very symbiotic relationship there. And so, when you're thinking about your health and you're thinking about the stress, it's almost like, you give people well-meaning advice, right? And they say, well, just don't stress about it. Relax. And then here's Jennifer's like, well, I've set some parameters and boundaries there. What kind of resistance or what kind of was getting in the way to where then you were successful in it? What did you have to fight to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think some of these things are really simple things, but I had to go to the root cause. And that's what functional medicine really is about. What's at the root cause of this? It's not necessarily, I know I need to eat this, this, and this, and I know I need to move my body. But it's really typically mental and mindset is at the root cause. What am I telling myself? So I used to use words like I have to, I need to. To turn that around and start changing my mindset, I would this is what I really, really did. I put Post-it notes around my house. And they said, I have to, I need to, crossed out, I want to, I can. I want to, I can, or I'm able to, whatever it is, So I put these Post-it notes all over and I started changing my language because then possibilities will spring up of like, oh, I can do this, or I want to do this. And now all of a sudden you're like, ooh, like a spring in my step. I want to go have a really long walk with a friend. Oh, and by the way, I got 3 miles in and I got this many steps, like have that be the passive part instead of saying, I need to do 10,000 steps a day, really changing this around. But it really needs to get to the root cause first of like, what are you telling yourself? How are you talking to yourself? Because once that changes, the lens is totally different. I get to go to the farmer's market on Saturday and I just love those fresh vegetables, and when I pick them up every time I go, they last longer, they're more nutritious, and I feel like my brain works better, versus, oh, shoot, it's a week that I need to get some frozen vegetables. I know I'm not going to feel so great, but if I have to do it, I will, or whatever it is. So getting a little bit deeper on some of these areas. Stress is unfortunately, it's become like this really not good word. I'm reading a book now. It's called The Upside of Stress. And it's very interesting. Her work is just, she's got a lot of science to this of all of a sudden, if you think of stress as good stress. So I'll give you an example of good stress is something that's trending big time right now with health and wellness is putting your body in a state of stress for good. And the term is called hormesis. So hormesis means we're going to put enough stress on our body that it actually is really good for longevity of life. So an example of that is intermittent fasting, cold plunging, saunas. These are things to put your body in hormesis, a little bit of stress that does your body good. So that's an example of a good stress. But, there's other things too, and we just forget about it. So many times I'm not using the word stress. I'm just saying, well, tell me about your health and where do you want to be and why do you want this? What will it enable you to do? So when we think about it that way, this is the work I did of getting a little bit deeper instead of the normal, like, what diet do I need to eat? What gym do I need to go to? Everyone tells me I need to be in bed by whatever, those are the things constantly out there. But what's the why behind them all? And what do I want to do? If I'm a night owl, I'm not going to bed at 10 o'clock. There's no way. I've got to work with my natural cycle, what I feel is right. So tapping into your inner knowing as well, and being okay with flexibility and grace. But guess what started? It was the self-compassion that started that engine.
That's right.
Otherwise, I would have never got over here. It's like, oh, I get to make choices today. I get to make choices about my life.
Empowering, right? It feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's something I definitely need to incorporate as I'm hearing that. And I'm even thinking about, how I can instill some of, that change of thought process in my own children, because even at very early ages, I'm seeing, how they're putting that language, as we were talking about, I have to, I need to, so I'm just thinking about, wow, this is great because it gives you that empowerment, and without having that self-compassion, it's so hard because you feel like everything's so rigid. And if you don't do something, then you're a failure, and that's not what this is about. This is about, changing that narrative in our own mind to thinking more, not just more positively, but embracing how much of a privilege it is to do these things.
Yes. Yeah. And the choice, like even the people you surround yourself with, who are they? Are you feeling like they're a circle or are they a cage?
Ooh, that's
and I know that family is different in its own little realm. And sometimes we have to have some good boundaries around family. Some of family members we want closer to us because they're such a great support for us. And others we may be like, I like them in little doses, little doses is best, but recognizing and like putting pen to paper. I know you said that in your last episodes, like sometimes you just got to put things in pen to paper of on a piece of paper, drawing a circle. Who do you want in your circle? And who's kind of floating around the edge because, yeah, you want them in your life, but not real close, because you get to choose. You get to choose. And there could be people out there on the outskirts trying to get your attention who are super supportive. And you end up spending your time with the people who are draining you. And here they are like, hey, I'm over here whenever you're ready. I'm ready to support you. And you're like, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Such great, you're living your strengths, you're following your beliefs. You've been able to share so much with us today. I greatly appreciate that. And, as coaches, we're trained to celebrate incremental wins and small successes. And so as I was hearing your story, things were flooding into my head too of what do we tell ourselves? And you use the word grace, and that is my word of the year. And it's funny, and I used it in a slightly different context actually to find out what each of the letters meant for grace. And I said, I do a decent job, at least I feel like I do a decent job with giving other people grace. But I realized I didn't do a whole lot of giving myself grace. And I don't consider myself a perfectionist by any stretch. People have accused me of that. And I'm like, no, I'm a hyperachiever. There's a difference.
I'm with you. That's on mine too for the PQ test.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Positive Intelligence. Great book.
That's me too. Yeah.
I just keep analyzing it, trying to understand. And is this landing? And when you give yourself self-praise, and it's not narcissistic, I promise. It took me a while to get into that habit of saying, what have I accomplished this week that I'm proud of? And really telling yourself that, and with your health, she's given a lot of great tips. I mean, there's so many more in her book, and just on her website is newwayhealthcoach.com. If you want to learn more about what she does and offers into the community, because I know all of us could benefit from the good stress and not so much the negative stress that society and the world around us is flooded with. And so taking control of what you can take control of just means so much. So thank you so much for your positive influence in the world, I should say, and also on our podcast today. Lizzy, any other final comments that you have?
I just want to thank you, Jennifer. This has been just such great information that you've given us through your journey. And I definitely am going to be putting some of these things that we talked about today in practice. And I'm just so excited to see, where your journey goes from here. You're doing great stuff. And I just encourage you to continue what you're doing because it's definitely needed.
Thank you. And thank you for both of you for just doing this podcast because it's going to affect so many people's lives. And this is what's needed right now is people feeling like they are supported. They're connected with people who get them, who've been through the hard stuff and not holding those hard stories back.
Yeah. And we have more in common than we think we do. And these are the things that if we share it, it's more bearable. And we're here to support each other in this community. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and special appreciation to Jennifer for your time today.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Take good care.
Thanks for listening, and remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your purpose awaits. Like, share, and subscribe to stay radiant.